Dallas, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
And congratulations on the new record. We're going to play the whole thing, release day, and we'd love to have you go through the record with us.
Thanks. I'd love to talk about it with you.
First off, how are you feeling?
I feel very good. Yeah, I'm happy for it to be out in the world and for people to digest it however they want to these days, you know. And yeah, I'm still proud of it.
I wanted to start at the beginning as we're going to go song by song. Do you remember when you decided it was time to start writing for this record? Was it a clean slate to start?
I don't think so. You know, I think I wrote the bulk of what would become Begin Again really early in like February 2020 when I was on tour over in Europe, right at the end, basically, you know, where like we would be leaving a city and then a week later it would shut down. And we'd be like, this seems quite serious. But I remember that was a pretty lonely time. And I wrote what would become Begin Again in that moment. But then it went sort of months and months because the world got so strange, and I think I became so convoluted emotionally that just took a little while to settle in and remember that I could actually write to help myself deal with how I was feeling, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because Begin Again is the last track.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we're going to start at the top with Meant to Be. I think it's interesting, too, that you gave us the first 3 songs before releasing the record. Why was this one, again, the one to start it all off? Did you want it chronological?
No, but I don't know if that was like a scheme or a plan. But Meant to Be just always had to be the first song to come out, you know, like I still get emotional about it. But to think about the record only sort of really existing because of this terrible thing, it needed to be, I didn't want to avoid it, you know?
And I'm an emotional wreck, so I'm going to keep myself together. But I'm happy we got to play that one and take a little bit of a moment. But talking about starting the record off with that one and how it was so important, I wonder about sequencing. Because as a listener, it feels like you're telling the stories of grief in the stages of grief in the sequencing. But is that the way you put out the album? Is that what was important to you?
I mean, for me, like making a record has always been about telling the story front to back, you know. And whether it's like seamless and I have happened to write a group of songs that can all be sort of told as the same story, or just like sonically it makes sense. But this record, it just really unfolded itself pretty easily to me, you know. And Underground being second was, I think, because it's almost a reaction to Meant to Be. You know, if Meant to Be is just sort of in the contemplative moment of why, you know, Underground is that, okay, well, you have to keep going. So that's why I sort of put it second. But it's the sort of releasing the first 3 songs as the singles or whatever you want to call them, like that also just felt right as well. Like that was the way I wanted the songs to be heard. Anyways, you know, like they could have been anywhere on the record, and that's how I wanted it to be.
There's something beautiful about vinyl coming back, and we'll talk about your album artwork coming up as well. But, you know, like listening to things in the order as the artist would want you to hear them. I think it's interesting that you were like, no, when we release these singles, this is the order to deliver to the fans.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned that, you know, Underground is a pairing of sorts to Meant to Be. Are there a lot of tracks on the record that have that kind of parallel?
I don't know. I keep getting asked about this now, and I think the whole record sort of really works as one piece of music, you know? And I don't think I planned that at all, but it does feel like it tells each sort of next song just moves the story along, and it moves the mood and emotion along, and it kind of goes through the peaks and valleys. And I mean, I think I was just trying to tell the story of how I was feeling with the way it sounded, right?
Well, Underground is definitely a bit more hopeful, which is nice to hear. We're going track by track through the brand new record, The Love Still Held Me Near with Dallas Green. Now we're on to, we're going to have to do a creative radio edit for this one. Thanks a lot, Dal. Effed it up. I'm sure you don't think about that when writing lyrics.
No, and to be completely honest, like when this song started taking shape, I was really happy that it was so catchy and that everybody was going to have a terrible time trying to play it.
Thanks.
I did. Because, and also I was able, that's a way of me saying to people, maybe you should be a little bit more relaxed about certain things. But I wanted to write a playful song about how effed up it is when you're trying to be in a relationship with another human being, you know? And I feel like everyone who's attempted that understands what I'm talking about. I remember the night the sort of chorus came to me and I sort of snickered to myself. And I think there was a moment where I was like, I can't do that. That's too, you know, whatever. But then I just sort of leaned into it and was like, no, this is just like a fun way to sing about it. And everybody likes swearing.
It's true, except for my boss when we play it on the radio.
Exactly.
I love that you do talk about, you know, as humans, we're all in relationships constantly, and there's that kind of ebb and flow and kind of understanding what it's like to be, I guess, collaborators in life. But this one has an absence of blame completely, and I thought there's such a real honesty in that. Why is that important to have that kind of...
Well, because I mean, you know, I feel like that's a version that doesn't get told a lot. I think being in a relationship is difficult, you know, and it doesn't even have to just be a romantic one. I mean, like, we all try to coexist with one another, and somebody told me that they thought this song could also be like a song to the world, like, we've blown it. And I was like, oh, really? I never thought about that, but yeah, sure, absolutely, right?
You know, it's funny, you talked about how there could be a parallel with, you know, climate change in the world, and I was like looking at the track listing, I'm like, okay, there's the water is coming, hard time, without warning, after disaster,
Yeah.
the things we choose to care about, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I kind of wonder, too, because you are known as the artist who brings out all the feels. Is that, in some ways, when you're creating an album, a burden, where you're like, I want to go in this direction, and you're like, it's
No.
not. I got to lean into that vulnerability a little bit more.
No, because I feel it's funny. Like I guess after doing it for so long, and you just sort of have to kind of flow with what people's perceptions of you are. I've never really kind of let that dictate how I make music, but I've always. There's moments where I always think to myself, oh, should I just like stop writing songs this way? Should I like attempt to be more narrative based or fluffy, or should I, you know, explore a different way of... And then I always just think, well, no, this is how I like to write. You know, I love all of those other types of music, and I love all different types of songwriting, but for some reason I've always felt such comfort in writing this way, you know? And I do wonder if it's just because I started writing this way when I was young, and that's what people connected to, I think. So starting off with a real supportive place to share my feelings has just allowed me to almost lean more into it, you know, because there's enough people writing all the other ways. I like writing this way. I'm happy to be the feelings manager of Canada, or whatever you guys want to call me, or president. You know, which I'm coining now.
Okay.
I'm coining that here.
Yes, Dallas Green, Feelings Manager of Canada, with me here on Indie88.
Sorry.
I think it's great. I feel like I would like to be your, assistant in the emotional journey.
Yes, absolutely.
Lord knows I am like full steam ahead, full steam emotions.
Yeah.
At a constant pace. But I think that's what makes... being a music fan, I mean, again, I can't create music. I can't write a song to save my life. But I feel like connecting to songs on a deep level is such a really, it's a joy. It helps get you through. You are soundtracking a lot of people's, journeys with grief, with love, with, highs and lows. And I'm sure as an artist, when you see your face tattooed on someone's body or your lyrics tattooed on someone's arm.
Yeah. That's very strange whenever you see that. I mean, great. Show it however you want to show it. You know, I've got song lyrics of other bands tattooed on me for sure. But it just feels strange as the person when the table is turned.
Yeah.
But no, I think all I'm doing is carrying on a tradition of the things that I was listening to when I was growing up. You know, like that's what moved me when I was younger and started like really, really getting into records and wanting to know everything about them and how you write a song and all of that. The ones that were connecting to me deeply were the ones where people felt like they were bearing their soul, you know? So I don't think it's a surprise that this is the way I write either, you know? Like, it's just, if I think about like listening to Chris Cornell or Lane Staley, two troubled dudes who were trying to get what was in their head, you know, down on paper, and or Jeff Buckley, or these real, you know, emotional heavy hitters. Neil Young, listening to Neil Young records. I mean, how much more plainly does Neil tell you about how he's feeling than when he's singing to you? So yeah, that's always what I've like when I've just been drawn to writing that way, in hope to connect with somebody.
When you do have the urge to write and you're getting things down, I'm sure you have to take a break from the process. Do you lean into those albums, those artists from early days?
Yeah, well, I do listen to a lot of music that doesn't sound like what I make, which is always helpful. You know, I love pop music, and I love listening to women sing. So
were you listening to like Dua Lipa while putting this record together?
Well, no, actually, I will say something that really sparked my creative spirit in that summer of 2020 was kind of rediscovering why I liked doing this in the first place. You know, it was like playing guitar along to my favorite records in my music room, like I was when I was a teenager. Just learning, like I was saying earlier, about how deeply I cared for this thing before it became my life and my career, and then my career and my life is singing about my life and all of this pretzel that I've twisted myself into over 20 years or whatever. Just really finding that beautiful inspiration again of like how amazing it is to play a guitar and along to a record you love. And I think when I was writing all the songs, I kind of wanted to evoke that or something, you know?
I do want to bring up, I'm trying to think of the lyric. Oh, here it is. It's from Things We Choose to Care About. No more easy victories of youth, just the things we choose to care about, is what you just said, kind of reminded me of, do you need to kind of go back to that early youthful time, or do you need to have that perspective of it?
Well, maybe I didn't know I needed it. I had a funny moment last night. I was walking home from the Raptors game, and I was actually listening to that song because I feel like I only had a couple more days left with the songs, just to me, before they become other people's. And I was walking, and that line kind of went through my headphones, and I looked around, and I was walking by the TD Bank that I used to like come up and skateboard at when I was 17 years old, and the old skater kids would pick me up at 1:00 in the morning, and I would sneak out of my house and drive to Toronto from St. Catharines and skateboard all downtown in the wee hours of the morning, you know? And I was like, wow, that was just totally had like a totally different perspective on my life in that moment, you know? So maybe I didn't know I needed those things to kind of like rejuvenate my creative spirit, but really, it really helped.
The Love Still Held Me Near, which I thought was going to be the super mellow, vulnerable track, is an absolute jam. And my notes are, this is going to be the live song off this record. I wanted to talk about why this song, or why the title of the song represented the whole album.
I love a title track, you know? That's just like the purist in me or something. But I do always like to find something that represents what I think the whole album is, you know? And so when I wrote that tune, I didn't know at the time that was going to be the one or the line, I guess. But then when I was finished and, you know, sort of had my pick of the litter, I kept coming back to that because I did feel that the record was joyful, you know? And I didn't think that it was this sort of desolate like upheaval of my emotions. I felt like it was about the healing process and about moving forward through just a difficult time in my life. So The Love Still Held Me Near just sort of represented the idea that it was finding all those moments of joy and, you know, going towards like the joy and the light and the love of everything that kind of just helped get me through it.
Can I ask you about the early guitar part in the track?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a singing saw a little bit, and I thought it had like neutral Milk Hotel vibes.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, there's some different sounds on this record. There's like I don't. Again, I'm not a musician, but like that turn shaker comes up a little bit later on.
Sure,
The percussion's a bit brighter.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the sonic vibes of this one a bit?
Yeah. This one was a cool moment. I remember when I kind of came up with started to build the demo by myself and came up with the weird little sort of wandering synth line that's going against the crazy guitar part.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's cool. I'm not going to play that though, because Matt will play that, because I don't really know how to play the keyboard. And then the guitar thing was, I just did like a real crazy one take rip through the song on the demo. Not necessarily for it to be recreated, but as I like to do that when I'm making demos. Like I'll do just like a thing that will remind me about a vibe I'm going to look to chase when I'm making the record, you know, just a little something like this. Mm-hmm. So I did one of those, and then when Johnny came to the studio, when the boys showed up to play on the record, John had learned this whole weird thing that I had done. And he was like, I learned this part. And I'm like, you learned that whole weird one? And he was like, yeah, I know it. And I'm like, okay, well, what do we do now? You know? So then that whole part became John's kind of interpretation of this crazy, weird way I was playing guitar. But John really just made it into a part, you know? And then that with the wandering synth line, it really kind of created this mood for the song that I was looking for, because to me, that's the alarm is sounding, that song. You know, it's like, it's very urgent, I think. You know, it's constantly moving. There's all this sort of chaos sonically throughout the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And that's what the lyric is about in a way. You know, it's about being in the middle of the storm and kind of like calling out for help.
We're on to track number 5, A Little Mercy, which I expected to be the saddest song. And I feel like is the most confident. It's like staring grief in the eye, being like, okay, enough. That's enough. Like, what? I don't know if that's fair to say.
Yeah, sure. That's great. Like I think that's a good way to describe it.
So where were you in your writing process when this one came to you?
This is my favorite song on the record, by the way. Yeah.
And why is that?
I just love a 6-minute, 2-chord, one melody. I got to get something off my chest song, you know, with a hell of a groove. Mm-hmm. So I really love just this song as a vibe. But I was in the middle of, I think I was working on a different song one night, and it was not coming very easily. So I sort of abandoned ship for a minute, and it was right around the time when I had sort of started corresponding with Kit, who's the beautiful painter who painted the cover of the record. And we were kind of just starting to talk about process and because I think maybe she was painting and I was trying to write this song. And so we were just kind of have a little self-deprecation off or something, you know, about how we create and why we use it and all that stuff. And she really started kind of opening up to me about like the pain and that she feels and how she sort of uses her work, you know, to kind of work through it. Mm-hmm. Similar to how I like to write. And just through that conversation, it really got me going on this idea of like, how can I expand on that in like a sort of more bird's eye view of like, do we really need to suffer as much as we do to experience all the other good things that life has to offer, you know? An unanswerable question. So let me find a cool melody and a really good groove, and I'm gonna ruminate on that for a minute. Mm-hmm. And so it was that kind of conversation with Kit that she almost gifted me the song in a way, right? I was working on something else completely, and just through that conversation and kind of going through my notes, it was like, oh, I already have this song written. I just, this is something I think about a lot. That's where it all came from. The line that really sort of struck me that is still, I think, my favorite line on the record is where I say, are we not supposed to love in fear of losing someone?
When you say that out loud, out of context of the song? Like, well, you're not performing the song. Like, how do you feel?
Yeah, well, I mean, like that was the line where that's where it connected to me, and I was like, okay, now I can put myself into this song too, you know? Because sometimes that's how it happens. Like, that's a grand idea to try to tackle, but then I just need some connection to it, and then I can put myself into it. So, but yeah, saying it now is, I mean, yeah, absolutely, we're supposed to.
And you brought up Kit doing the artwork. It sounds like you were both kind of at the same time she was creating the work, you were creating the record?
No, she painted the record while listening to the record. Long story short, Kit listens to my music a lot when she paints. Okay? Like, it's almost exclusively. And I figured this out through our strange the coincidence of us meeting. And when I was finished making the record, we were just like, I think you should paint the cover of my record while listening to it.
Wow.
Yeah, because that's what she does. She listens to my records and paints. So I was like, here, listen to the one that no one's heard, and paint. And so I said, I think it should be a picture of my face, but where I look at least okay, like, you know. And my beautiful friend Vanessa took a photo where I felt like it looked like I was at peace. And then Kit painted it.
Now we are on to things we choose to care about, or as I say, sad country Dallas.
Sure.
And that's in my notes.
Absolutely.
I know we briefly talked about it earlier, but there's something about that lyric, no easy victories of youth, just the things we choose to care about, and like a culmination of life experience in such a perspective.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You know, I think I've had the idea for this song for a lot of years, actually. And even the melody, and like I've known that this is the song I wanted it to be for years, but I just couldn't finish it. And then I do feel like I had to kind of go through all of the stuff I went through in order to finish it, in order to kind of like discover the real sentiment of what I was trying to say with that idea, you know? So I do truly think it's like, it's experience, and that's all it is. It's just an observation on where I am in this moment in my life, you know?
You know, Dallas, we were talking earlier about kind of the juxtaposition of sonics and sound and emotion and lyrics. And I feel like After Disaster is another example of that. Loneliness has never sounded so funky.
Yeah.
Can you give us some context about this one?
Absolutely.
Or about that one?
Yeah. I was angry. You know, this is like, I think this is the one you were referring to earlier as being confidently vulnerable.
Yes.
Right?
I think there was also...
maybe another one?
Yep, another track.
Okay. But I feel that way in this song. It's like, yeah, I'm upset about where I am and what I'm feeling, you know? I think this is a great juxtaposition of me being like, okay, I'm going to write a song that's very personal to me, and I'm still going to, you know, get this off my chest, but do I ever love a good groove?
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like I found this groove, and I was like, here it is. This is all I needed. Again, three chords. I can get I can get it. I can do a lot with 5 minutes in this groove, you know?
Absolutely. Well, so now we are on to Without Warning, which again, in my notes, I heard the fingerprints of Matt Kelly on this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt Kelly is a longtime band member and produced the record, which I feel like also, as you having many producers accessible to you, why was it important to keep him so close as well?
Well, Matt was there from the inception of so many of these songs. And also, Matt lived through all of these things with me, you know? So on an emotional level, I knew I wasn't going to have to like, A, hide from anything, or B, explain anything to anybody. Because Maddie knew exactly what I was trying to work through, because I feel like he was trying to work through it too. Through the kind of early fall of 2020, Matt and I started kind of seeing each other a little bit more. And we also then developed, I'd start to show him all these new kind of ideas I've been working on. And then in that moment, we kind of discovered a new working relationship where just him being around and his sort of wizardry of arrangement and harmony, and he can play just about anything you put in front of him. It really sped up the process of like finishing the songs, because I am terrible with stuff like that. And I get really discouraged real quick, you know, like I can't open up a new track on my laptop, and then I'm like, well, I'll come back to that in a few hours.
Okay.
You know? Because I don't know how to work a computer. It's my own fault. But anyways, Maddie, and even an earlier version of like us realizing, oh, we can do this a lot quicker, was this song specifically. I was rummaging around in like an old folder with just like bits and bobs of, you know, those little chaotic moments I was telling you about earlier, but this might make me think about something. And I came up with, I opened a folder and it had just like a real simple kind of what the verse and chorus you hear is just on a piano that I must have played. And it was almost like in the instant I knew I heard the song. You know, I was like, oh, I know what this could be. And it worked on something real quick. And then I called Matt, who was on the other side of the country in BC. And I said, I've just sent you like a verse and chorus idea of this song that I know is in my head. Can you please put together like a 4.5-minute demo with a bridge in there? Like, you know, drums, bass, blah, 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 an arrangement. Send it back to me, because I know I can write this song today. A few hours later, he had sent me like a frame of it. And I sat there, and like 2 hours later, I had finished the song.
Incredible. And
that never happens, by the way. I'm not saying that as like, this is how good I am. That never happens. And in that moment, Matt and I kind of really writing that song together was like a real sort of a real moment of deeper connection there. So then by the time we got to the studio, it was like, he knew exactly what I was going for, you know? And he was like leading the band, and the band are his best pals from out there, and they have their own kind of hidden language like I have with Alexis, you know?
Yeah.
So Maddie just became this real, like I don't think either record, the Alexis record, or I don't think both of them happen without Matt kind of unlocking some stuff from my brain, for sure.
We are on to song number 9, Hard Time. There's kind of a real message to live your life. Who is that message for? Is it, when you were writing it, was it for you? Was it for your fans?
Yeah, I think I'm always singing to myself first, you know? It's like a kind of reminder. And sort of in, I think, the same vein that Underground was written in. It does question a little bit, you know, about faith and things like that, like How Meant to Be does, I think. And when I started writing the music, it was very fun and sort of jubilant, almost like. And then when I wrote that chorus line, it just felt like it had to be like a fun kind of rock song almost. I mean, it's a soft rock song, let's be honest. That's what I do. But so that sort of juxtaposition again about like speaking about something heavy, but making it more of just sort of a rallying cry, you know? And this is not, you know, not a knack to people who are deeply religious or believe in certain things, you know, but I do think that sometimes that gets in the way of living the life that's right in front of you. So it's sort of just a reminder to kind of put one foot in front of the other.
We are at a track that I was so curious by the time we got here. The song is called The Water Is Coming. There's a lot of water on this record. There's the waves, the tides, the water. Why was that imagery so important to you? Or was it coincidental?
Well, no, I don't know. It's strange, you know, because I even think about, you know, we shot the video for Meant to Be in what looks like we're standing in water, and that song's about Karl who drowned. And I wonder if there was this, I don't know, like subconscious line going through my brain when I was writing all the songs, you know. Very much could have been. I don't think it was deliberate, but I feel like the water is such good imagery to tackle when you're writing a song, because a lot of the times I'm writing songs about kind of very tumultuous moments, you know, trying to capture this feeling of when you're sort of uncertain, you know, and the water is ever changing and can be calm and can be, you know, chaotic. And I think I was a bit more bird's eye view observational of the human race with this song, you know? And I remember reading that line in an article in like the New Yorker, and it was like a real hectic climate change article about flooding, and it opened with "the water is coming," and then went on to describe how, you know, New York City is going to have like a giant wall in front of it, and all these dark doomsday kind of stuff. But I wrote that line down because I just thought, wow, that's powerful. But then I read this book called A Paradise Built in Hell. Have you ever heard about this book?
I have not, no.
It's her name's Rebecca Solnit, and she basically writes this book about how she sort of analyzes all of these different tragedies across human life, like a great earthquake and 9/11 and things like that. And basically her study is that humans are never more altruistic towards one another, never more just perfectly compassionate with another, unless there's times of pure tragedy. That's the only time we're like, all right, what can I do for you? You know? And it's a really interesting concept. And she writes in it, a lot of the times it's like we're wandering around with this, well, you won't care for me, so I won't care for you type attitude towards one another as humans. And I just thought, man, that's huge, right? It's such again, very unanswerable question or debate or whatever. But I thought, let me try to write a song about that and make it sort of sound like, I guess like a dreamy pop song or something. I don't know why I would kind of like want to write a song about that, but sometimes it's like I'm hurting just on a bigger level, you know?
There's a lot of sweetness in the words, but there's a lot of bite.
Yeah.
Okay, Bow Down to Love is going to be stuck in everyone's head.
I wrote that song after I was having some interesting conversations with a great songwriter named MC Taylor. He goes by Hiss Golden Messenger. You ever listen to them?
I have
Well,
not.
you should, because he's awesome.
Noted.
He truly is. I think he's one of the best songwriters we've got going. But he had sent me his new record before it had come out, and I was listening to it. And then he sent me this other one. And this other one was this crazy record that he had made all these long guitar loops, and then him and his friend turned it into this like crazy free jazz instrumental opus. It was unbelievable, right? And I was like, where did this come from, you know? And he told me that after George Floyd was murdered, and he was just sort of engulfed in the aftermath of watching, you know, he started making all of these guitar loops. I was thinking all of these similar things about like when I watched that happen, and then I just was doing nothing but watch the anger and the hatred, and also mixed with the fear of the pandemic. I just felt so helpless for us, and I just really wanted to write something based around that feeling, like, but sort of rooted in compassion, about this sort of simple crying anthem that there has to be a better way for us to coexist with one another, you know? And again, that's a very large thing to try to tackle in a song. But when Mike told me he created this whole crazy, beautiful piece of art just from him feeling a way, it like made me like, okay, I can do that too, right? It's like another reminder that you feel a certain way, and being a songwriter who reacts to that, like it's unbelievable mechanism to have, to just get out of your own way, you know? And so that's where Bow Down to Love came from, was just me feeling so sad about what I was, or at least what it looked like the world was doing to itself. I guess too, with writing the song, you know, you just go, this is just something I can do to help myself, and it's nothing, you know, it's just writing a song, but it is like trying to turn a feeling of sadness and pain into something beautiful, right? And I think that song too is so much more than just that moment, right? It ended up kind of becoming this statement for the record too, you know?
Well, now here we are at the end of the record. Begin Again. Earlier, we were talking about how that song was the first song you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it fitting to put it as the finale?
You know, to me, when we were putting it all together, it didn't make sense anywhere else. And I think, I mean, there's the really beautiful moment that we captured somehow where I say, "Cheers, horse," to the boys, and they say it back. And
I do have a note. Cheers.
Cheers, horse. Yeah, because that was Karl's nickname.
Okay.
But it was also a word that we would use as like a pal, you know? You know, "Horse, can you toss me over that bottle opener?" Or so on and so forth, you know? But he was also Horse. But that was also what you called everybody. But he came up with it, so he was also Horse.
I had to listen to it a couple times at the beginning. I was like, HORSE to confirm.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Cheers, horse. Yeah.
Cheers, horse.
So that's just something we continue to say. And you know, that the song is really about, again, it's one of those ones that it's pretty much about all of it. But it's deeply rooted in working on the grief process. And I think when I ended up sequencing the record and it was all said and done, it was almost like Bow Down to Love felt like the end, and then this sort of is like the epilogue if I'm telling a story.
There's a brightness to it.
Yeah.
Well, we're so grateful you were able to take the time and go track by track through the new record with us. Congratulations. And, you know, how are you feeling now knowing it's out there in the world?
I feel great. I do. You know, there's always a nice release that you feel when something you've created is now kind of left the stable. But no, like I said, I'm proud of this record. I'm proud of all the people who worked on it. It was a very beautiful process, and I hope people dig it.
Thank you so much, Dallas.
Thank you.